Hello everyone. I'd like to thank you all for coming. We're going to get started here in just a couple of minutes. We're going to let our people file in, but while we're doing that, I'm going to introduce you to today's topic. My name is Brandon Boucher. I'm the Research Product Manager and Support Manager at 80 Instruments. And thanks again for coming to the latest in our LabChart Mastery series webinars. Today's topic is going to be about LabChart features you should know. And what we started off, with the idea behind this is, I realize that there's a lot of things in LabChart that, people really only get to see when some really specific question comes up. There's a lot of features in LabChart that we built in over the years. This software is, over 20 years running in development. So there's a lot of things that we put in here that were meant to solve, a small problem and were meant to be a really cool feature and sort of get lost in some of the teaching that we do when we go over some of the larger features in LabChart. So I wanted to show and really highlight some of those smaller features, some of the little tools that we've put in over the years that really make LabChart, expand its ease of use and really make it, the software it is. And some of these things, I'll be honest, a couple of these things, I learned as recently as just a few months ago. So, and I've been at 80 Instruments for 6 years and working with the software ever since. So these are things that are really cool, and we took a poll of, basically all of the staff throughout the world, and these are the things that we came up with as some of the hidden gems in LabChart. So I hope you enjoy the webinar, and we'll get started. Of contents for what I'm going to go through today. One of the struggles that I had in creating this webinar, even though I really wanted to do this because I thought it was, something that people would want to see, the little small features in LabChart that really make it, nice and advanced in terms of the usability that you're going to see when you start really getting into using LabChart. You can see that a lot of these things are very random. If you're familiar with some of these things, that's wonderful. I intended this webinar to be great for both introductory level people as well as people who are very comfortable and advanced users in LabChart. I promise you there's at least a few things in here you haven't seen or used. And again, one of the struggles that I had in creating this is that, the list of things we came up with are pretty random. They're scattered, and there's a lot of things all over the place in the software that we're going to be talking about today. So I did my best in creating a flow of this presentation that we would get through everything and it would sort of make sense in what we were doing. So I'm going to go slowly, and we're going to go through all of these things, as we can. If you have any questions, if you miss anything, please type them into the questions bar and we'll go through those. So just a second here while I switch over to LabChart. So you guys should see LabChart pop up here in just a second. What I have here is I have a file that I have created previously that's going to allow me to showcase some of these features that I wanted to showcase today. So what we're looking at here is just a simple playback file. We have some data that I can record live and analyze live that I've done. And what I'd like to do is show you some of the things that I thought would be nice to look at with this file at first. And again, all of these features are things that all of our staff came up with, are things that are hidden gems in LabChart that people don't use or haven't seen before. So as I get started, I'm going to start recording. I'm going to have more data coming in here. As you can see, I have a couple of channel calculations. I have my heart rate being calculated, and I have the corrected QT from my ECG being calculated here in channel 4. And one of the things that we've seen in the past, and we created this feature in early versions of LabChart 7. I can't remember if it was 7.0 or it was a little bit later, but this feature is the layouts feature. And the layouts feature is very nice, and especially in certain circumstances. And those circumstances are in situations maybe where you have many channels that you're recording. Now, I only have 4 channels today, but in situations where you have many channels being recorded, the layouts feature is great. And what you're going to see here is I've saved 3 layouts. Okay, I've saved a data pad layout. If I hover my cursor over this, you can see data pad here. I can I have a layout for ECG analysis, and I have a layout for recording. So the circumstance that I'm trying to create is I'm trying to create a circumstance, where a user would want to see different things under certain circumstances. So I saved 3 features here. This layout here I created for situations where I wanted to use this specific layout for recording. So if I click this button, what I created was a layout that created a situation where the user during recording really only needed to see specific things. We needed to see only the raw data both in channel 1 and channel 3, and the calculations are actually done just by simply showing our DVMs in channel 1 and channel 2. And you can see the data without actually seeing the tracing. Okay, and this is especially great when you have situations where you have, say you were recording with 16 channels. If there are only a few channels you need to see at a time, perhaps you can group the channels. So we had a customer once that had, many electrophysiology channels recording from the heart and also many pressure channels. I think it came up to about 16 channels, and what they did was, instead of seeing all 16 channels at once, they created 2 layouts, one for the electrophysiology channels and one for simply the pressure channels. And this created a situation where it was much easier to see what was happening at any given time. If you wanted to see the pressure channels, you click the pressure button. Another thing that I've created here is I've created another layout called ECG analysis. And ECG analysis allows me to click on the ECG analysis tab and simply very easily switch to my online ECG analysis. The ECG analysis features will open. I will very quickly see those specific features that I want to see. I can check in on all of my data. I can check in on all the features in ECG analysis, and when I'm satisfied with what I've seen, I can switch back to my normal recording layout. Okay, so this is a great feature to use and utilize for yourself, and I can show you quickly, how you can create a layout of your own. Say I wanted to create another layout that's sort of the standard layout. I'm going to close my DVMs. I'm going to equalize my channel height so I can see everything. I'm going to click the plus button here for new layout. And if you didn't see what I did there after this pops up, I'm going to click cancel here quickly. And I'm going to go back to the plus button and click that one more time. So the plus button here, I'm going to click new layout. My dialog pops up. And I can add a button label. I'll type S for standard. Type in standard as the button tooltip. That's what comes up when you hover over the button. So it shows you a longer description of what you're supposed to be looking at. And I can save all of these things about the way that we have laid out. The mini windows, which are the DVMs that we had out earlier, the channel heights, the split part position, and the display compression. All of those things can be saved. So now I have my standard layout. I can switch back to my recording, switch back to my standard, and it's just that quick. I can go back and forth, go back to my ECG analysis, and there it is. So I hope, if you haven't seen layouts, it's a very easy thing to set up for yourself. And it's important to note that this is not based on the file. This is global for LabChart. So if you have a computer that you're working on your own computer, say you have a laptop with LabChart on that you do data analysis with, you can create these layouts and they stay on that computer for every data file you might look at in the future. So the next thing that I wanted to show you is going to a different layout here. This layout that we have, sorry, I'm choosing the wrong one. This layout here has the DVMs on it. One of the things you're going to notice is a new feature that we've created in LabChart 7.3. And I think actually might have been 7.3.4 in a recent version, a recent release of LabChart, and that is the DVM tools or the DVM plotting tools. And what we can do with this is, if you look at each DVM, this one's showing the QTC on the bottom. This one is showing on the top is showing the heart rate. I can click on the settings button on those DVMs, which is up here in the top left, and that actually allows me to do a couple of things. If I click on the settings button, it allows me to calculate something in the DVM. By default, if you click on no calculation, the DVM shows the active number or the active value in that channel. So it updates as fast as your channel updates, and that updates as fast as it can, basically. And what you can do instead is you can do an average. You can calculate the maximum, the minimum over a series of times. So what I'm getting here is a 2-second average. My DVM is updating every 2 seconds. And I can graph that data as well. So without seeing a whole channel, I can simply see a small graph here that gives me some idea the trend of this data is following. And so what I'm doing is I'm calculating the average of every 2 seconds and graphing the last 15. So I click OK. We're going to start seeing some new data coming in here, and we're graphing the last bit of data here. So that's a really cool feature, a new one that we've come up with that we like to see. So what we can do with this, I'm gonna open up another layout here and click on my datapad layout. Now this is a layout that I've saved before, but what I wanted to do is show you another feature in LabChart that allows you to create this sort of structure in placing these windows the way you want them. So if I click, I'm going to close my datapad and I'm simply going to maximize. Let's just go to our standard layout. If I'm looking at this, what I'd like to do is open my datapad and then kind of look at these things in their proper manner. So if I open up the datapad, and I can open up the datapad by going to the toolbar here, I'm going to do some analysis with the datapad. The datapad will open. You can see here as of right now it's opens up over the top of my view here. Okay, I'm going to show you 2 ways you can sort of organize the way this looks. Now I already have my layout saved, but if I didn't have this layout saved yet, I'm going to show you the easiest way to make this organized. So there's 2 ways to do it, and there's 2 separate ways to do it. One is I can use my Smart Tile feature. The Smart Tile feature is under the Layout toolbar. It's the first button called Smart Tile. And the way that it works is you want to lay out your windows approximately how you'd want to see them. So by laying my windows out like this and then clicking the Smart Tile feature, it will automatically place them approximately the way they're already placed. So you should see this pop up here in a second after I've clicked that button, and that's what it does. If I adjust things so that maybe I want the datapad to be larger and the chart view to be smaller, and I get them approximately right, they don't have to be, they have to be fairly close to what you want them to be. You click the Smart Tile feature, it'll snap things into place. Okay. The other feature that we have is called Tile. Now the difference between Smart Tile and Tile is that if I choose Window and Tile are going to match the windows in size, and they're going to snap them in place. One important thing to know about Window and Tile, if I choose Tile here, it should snap into place, is that the active window always goes in the first position. So if I click on the datapad and make it the active window, and then I go to Window and Tile, it will be in the active position. Now, that's exactly how I created this ECG analysis layout. And that is simply, I went to Window and Tile and it made everything the right size. Now, if I adjust things here, and adjust these things as I see fit, I can use Smart Tile, and that's going to snap everything into place approximately where I place them. And then the Tile button, Window and Tile, is going to place them as I see fit with my active window going in the number 1 position. Okay, so that's how layouts work, both Tile and Smart Tile, and those are things that people don't use a lot. And when these features came out, I remember I was here when they came out. It was one of the frustrations. It was a simple frustration. It's just a small thing, but one of the frustrations I had when using Windows and using the modules where you have multiple windows is the ability to really organize things, and we've really taken that and made it a really easy thing to do if you know how to use the layouts feature. So the next thing that I want to talk about here is looking at a couple of data, really one datapad feature that people don't really know about. So I'm going to use my datapad layout, and I'm going to get everything set up here. And I'm going to go to Setup and Timed Add to Datapad. And what Timed Add to Datapad, if you're not familiar with it, what that does is that actually will continuously add data to the datapad. We have datapad webinars and things, so if you're interested in learning more about how the datapad works itself, you can look up those webinars and find those out. But as I'm recording new data, what you should notice is every 3 seconds we should be getting data added to the datapad. Okay, and that's exactly what we're getting. Now, one of the things that people don't know about is that you can actually tell a column that you want it to be a calculation. Some of you may know that you can come in and you can click on this cell edit mode in the datapad, and you can come in and you could do things like this cell. Say I wanted to turn the mean pulse rate into period. Okay, I could do 1 divided by this column times 60, just like Excel. Okay. I can also take this and I can drag it down just like I can in Excel. I can do that very manually. But one of the other things that I can do is I can actually make this calculation be automatic. I can come into my first column and I can type the same thing. This column equals this column, 1 divided by that column times 60. And without having to drag anything down, I can simply go to recalculate all rows. And that was just simply clicking on this button here and going to recalculate all rows. And that made everything calculate. Now, as I record new data, this column will be continuously calculated. So I can make an entire column in the datapad and be a new calculation. So that's something that a lot of people know about, and it's something we wanted to share. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to save this file, and I'm going to close it. We have a lot of data, a lot of comments and things in there, but I wanted to show you one feature that we can do with this. So now I've saved this file. I'm going to close the file. Okay. Now, this next feature is used in situations where you've done an experiment, you've gone through everything with it from beginning to end. You're really happy with how the experiment went. You did it yesterday. You're coming in this morning, and you're like, I really wish that I had created a settings file. Now, it is easy to open up that old data file and, save the settings file from it and then start from there. But we've added into the Welcome Center a nice feature that allows you to simply, make that procedure a little shorter. So what you can do with it is you can actually click on your old file, and this is features you should know. This is the file that I was using. And instead of opening it, saving a settings file, closing that file, and opening a new settings file, I can actually click on this clone button here. This clone button, if I click on it, will do exactly that. It will open a settings file that has all of the settings of that file. That's not a settings file. That's the old file that I had just saved that I created, yesterday. I can click on it, click clone, and it'll open a brand new file. Everything is the same. If I click start, all my calculations are the same, and I should get my timed add to datapad rolling with everything else. The one thing you will have to update, though, is that calculation. The calculation won't necessarily hold over in that case. So you will have to type that in if you want to do that. So the clone feature is really cool. Without having to open things up and save a settings file, you can simply clone an old file. One of the things that I wanted to show you next, I'm going to go back to my standard layout. One of the things that I wanted to show you next is that you can actually, one of the questions we used to have a lot back in, Chart 5 when I started working at 80 Instruments was, And again, this feature is really, really helpful when you have situations where you have many, many channels and you have a lot of things plugged into your Power Lab, and maybe one day you don't need 3 of those things that are plugged into your Power Lab, but those 3 things are plugged into channels 2, 3, and 4. In that situation, your only alternative is, simply to record from those channels anyway and ignore those channels in the old version of LabChart. Now, a feature that we added in was devices and channels. And so what a lot of people know about devices and channels, which is right here. So under Setup and Devices and Channels, but they know it as the feature that allows you to record from multiple Power Labs. But one of the other things that it allows you to do is record, is change the way that things are recorded. Okay, so I'm going to speak about a specific customer that I worked with on this. They had 2 Power Labs running, so they had 32 channels. All of them had something connected to them. On certain days, they would record from all of those channels. But on some days, they may only want to record from channels 1 through 3 on the first Power Lab, and then, say 5 through 8 on the second Power Lab. Only those specific channels. So what we did is we created settings files that allowed them to do that. And one of the things you can do in devices and channels is you can move around the channels of interest. So instead of recording in this first channel of the Power Lab, or the first channel of my software, now I'm doing this with a playback file, but you can do the same thing with a Power Lab. I'm going to go to my playback file, and I'm going to say channel 1, actually I want to be input 3. And channel 3, I want to be input 1. So I've reversed the channels of my pulse and my ECG. Okay. I click OK. I start recording new data, and the 2 channels are reversed. I'm recording ECG in channel 1, and I'm recording pulse on channel 3. Now that's, my calculations are now a little bit messed up, so I need to fix those. But first I just want to speak about how this, is helpful. Again, if you were recording multiple channels and say one day you only need to record from some of those channels, you can set up a settings file that makes it so. You only need to record from some of those channels. The rest of those can be left alone and not recorded from, and you can set it up so you don't have to worry about the hardware. You can simply do this in the software, and on any given day you can record from exactly what you want to record from. So one of the other features that we have here, and again I need to change around my calculations. So I'm going to adjust the calculations so they work properly with my new data as I've reversed it. So I'm going to change this calculation pulse rate, and I'm going to calculate it from pulse, which is in channel 3 now. I'm going to go to this, and I am going to change the source to channel 3. So I need to change that. And then the ECG analysis is now calculating from my pulse channel, so I need to switch it to my ECG channel. So I need to go to ECG analysis, settings, and switch to source channel. So that's okay. And I guess I need to rename my pulse channel. All right, so now I'm ready to go. One of the other things that I noticed though is that down below I was smoothing the ECG before, and I'm not now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to smooth the ECG again. And I'm going to do that by turning on smoothing. And I don't remember exactly the rate at which I was smoothing this, so I'm going to guess. I'm going to smooth this by 5 data points. And I don't, actually I don't think that was correct. And this is the next feature that I wanted to show you. Instead of having to go back to this pull-down menu, the last calculation that I was working with is available with a shortcut. If I press Control Page Up, it simply opens the calculation again. Okay, let me show you that one more time. I was changing the smoothing. Okay, I chose smoothing. I chose a specific setting. That wasn't quite right. I need to go quickly back to that and open it up again. I'm going to go Control Page Up, and my dialog will simply open. And I can change the settings in my calculation. The same is true for the rest of these calculations. If I have been working with cyclic measurements and say I made one of these settings wrong, let's make the settings wrong. Okay, so these settings are wrong here at this point. what I can do is simply, instead of going to the dialog, I can do Control Page Up, open that dialog directly, and change the settings. Okay, makes it quick when what you're trying to do is, adjust the calculations on the fly. You need to go back and adjust them again. Some of these next two features you may be aware of, but these are really cool things that we show people a lot. But they made the cut because they're really cool things that you can do when you're recording data. And that is, first, you can use the split view, and to do that, you're going to hover your cursor over the left bar in the chart view. You're going to grab the left bar and you're going to pull it out. And what that's going to do is it's going to split the screen in half. It's going to split the chart view in half for you. And what that gives you the ability to do is have two views. Both of them can be scrolling live if you want them to, or the one on the left can be static, and you can review old data by scrolling around. Okay? So that's the split view. The next thing you can do here is you can actually use the guidelines feature. The guidelines feature, if you right-click in the chart view and you choose guidelines, what guidelines allow you to do is place a line in the data. I'm going to place a line in my pulse rate channel at 67 beats per minute. You can shade above and below that line with different colors, and you can look for specific features. And the really cool thing about this is after you click OK, you can then see that very visually in the channel. Not only can you see that visually in the channel if you have a DVM open. Now, this doesn't work if you have the calculations running. So if I turn off my calculations here, the DVM will actually change colors according to what you're seeing in the chart view. So a really cool feature, allows you to see what's happening in a given channel. So I like those features, and there's a few more that I wanted to show you. I'm going to close everything here. I'm still recording, so it's not letting me do this. I'm going to open my original data file. A couple of things that were brought up in our discussions about this webinar is, how to select data. A lot of people miss this, and this is in some of our other webinars, but I want to show you the different ways you can select data. And selecting data is important. The way you select data is important. First, in selecting data, you are doing one of two things. By selecting data, you're either doing some sort of data analysis, or you're going to create an image. And the way that you select data is important. Okay, you can do it a few ways. First, you can obviously just click and drag in a channel and select a piece of data. Okay, that's the most simple way to do it. The next way to do it is hold the Alt key while you do it. If you hold the Alt key while you select data, what happens is you automatically select the data from the top of that channel to the bottom of that channel. That means you can be very specific about the y-axis. If you set the scale on the y-axis by going to Set Scale here on this option, you can then be very specific about the y-axis. That means when you're creating images, you can be very specific about the y-axis. Now, you can also be very specific about the y-axis in one channel. Oops, I'm hitting the wrong button there. Be very specific about the y-axis on one channel. Okay. You can select the same area in a second channel by holding Shift. If I hold Shift here and click and drag in the ECG channel, I can select the same time frame. Okay. Now, I can hold Alt and select in this channel. If I hold Shift Alt and select in the ECG channel, what happens is it automatically selects the same x-axis and the same y-axis. The whole y-axis from top to bottom. That means, again, if you're making images, being very specific about both axes is important because you want to, if you're making data comparisons, you want to make sure the axes are the same. So you can be very specific about it, make selections in this way, and it makes it very easy for you to make selections that are very specific. The next way to actually make selections is to click and drag in the time axis, which selects all of the channels from top to bottom. Okay. And then, of course, you also have the option to go to Set Selection, which is under Setup, or sorry, it's under Commands, and Set Selection, which is also done by Control-J. And what that allows you to do is be, even more precise about the timing. And if you lock this in, the timing, this means that any selection that you make is going to be exactly the same. If I click somewhere, I'm making the same time selection. If I click on that selection, you see this hand pops up, and I can click and drag that selection around. Okay, various ways of selecting data. All of them are important for different reasons depending on the usage that you're looking for. The next feature that I wanted to show you here is about preset comments. Okay, so I have some preset comments set up in this data file. I'm going to make sure that my set selection isn't completely locked so far, but okay, so I have some preset comments set up. If I go to preset comments here, I have a few of them set up. These are great. What I'm going to do is show you some differences between the way these are set up. I'm going to go to my function key mini window here. If I click on my function key mini window, and I'm going to show you how to set up these preset comments. If you're not familiar with preset comments, I'm coming back to this. Don't worry about it. But I'm going to click on my function key mini window. I'm going to click on OK. And what's going to happen is a little window is going to pop up here that's going to show me my available function keys. So as I'm recording data, the preset comments feature, really what it's intended to do is allow you to just click one button and add a comment to your data, okay, which is really cool. But I'm going to change my layouts here. I didn't have my menu window open, so sorry about that. I need to reopen it. I didn't think ahead when I changed my layout there, but I need to reopen that, so I'm just going to go to Preset Comments, open my function key menu window. So one of the things that I want you to notice is each of these are a little bit different. F4 actually has two comments associated with it. If I scroll through this list here, you can see that one of them says subject moved bad data. The other one says stable subject, resume good. This is a nice way of showing how, putting two comments together in the same button can be used. Because these comments are always going to be paired, this is going to be used. I dreamt of this in a situation where you're recording data, you're monitoring the subject moved. Obviously, this data is not good. I can hit F4. The subject moved bad data comment will go in. And as soon as they settle down, I can click F4 again, and you can say stable subject, subjects resume good, I guess. Okay? Which is really nice. And the way this is set up is if you go to Setup and Preset Comments, you can see that both of these are just simply set up with the same shortcut. Okay, I'm using function keys for shortcuts. You can use just about anything you want with shortcuts. But if I double-click on the area, if I click on this and edit it, you can see that I simply just said that the F4 shortcut is associated with this comment. Subject moved bad data, but it's also associated with this comment. And the normal way that this will work is that you will simply cycle through those comments. Bad data goes first, good data goes later. Okay? F5 is different. F5 is set up for baseline ready. That comment, if I click it, is just simply the one comment. So you can see the difference between what happens when I put multiple comments on the same button. They will go in order. Unless you click on these arrows, you can choose which one you actually want before you put it in. Okay? Or you just simply have one comment associated with one button. The last one that we have here actually in F6 is a special comment with some smart features on these preset comments. What you can do with this is, if I click on F6, You can see that the first comment that went in said experimental stage 1. The next comment, if you look at the list now, it says experimental stage 2. It also shows the time live. Okay, so it's 11:41 here. If I click on F6 again, it says experimental stage 2 and notes the time. F6 again, experimental stage 3, notes the time. F6 again, experimental stage 4, notes the time. Okay, and each of those times are different, and it counts. Each time I stop and start recording, it's going to start that count over. But the cool thing about the way this works is it's very easy to set up. If I go to Setup and Preset Comments again, show you how that one is set up. I'll just click on it and click Edit. That is set up with this #C and #T on the text of the comment, and those can be found here in this pull-down menu. #C is the comment count. That counts how many times the comment has gone in. The event count is going to be based on the event associated with it, and typically you'll use that in the digital bit, digital byte type of comments. Each time those happen, they will go in and they will change the event count. And then you'll see there's comment time and comment time 24-hour. I'm using comment time 12-hour, so it's showing 11:42 a.m. When I put those comments in. So it's really cool features if you want to add those in. Make them, make comments really versatile in preset comments. So that's cool. The other things that are down here in the smart comments are the stimulator features and then digital byte. The digital byte will tell you what the current digital byte is if you're using the digital inputs on the back of the Power Lab as a source for comments. The stimulator amplitude pulse frequency will be used in situations where you're using the stimulator to mark a comment that's happening, and then you can put in the stimulator features, the amplitude, duration, things like that. So those are cool things that you can do as well. Now, finally, there's just a couple more things that I had on the list, okay? And these are a couple of things that, people almost never know about unless they've been to a course or they've had somebody teach it to them specifically. And this one I just learned about literally, weeks ago. If you go to, everybody knows how to use, not everybody, many of you may know how to use the marker. The marker is a little tool down here in the bottom left. If you see my cursor hopefully circling around it down here, this is the marker. If you click and drag the marker and place it in a piece of data, as say right here, what happens is, I'm going to put it back, and we're going to look at it this way. So the DVMs, as they naturally occur, show you the current value of everything. So I have a time and I have a heart rate DVM that I've pulled out here. I'm going to make them a little bigger so you can see them a little better. As I hover my cursor over old data or live data, it's showing me the live value. If I hover my cursor over old data, it's showing me the value where my cursor is. The marker, if you place it in the data, changes those things to deltas. So it shows you the difference between where the marker is and where my cursor is, which is nice. Now, one of the things that I just learned about the marker is instead of arbitrarily placing it, say you wanted to place it at the beginning of the experimental stage, instead of arbitrarily placing it where it looks like you are right, one of the things that you can do is you can take that marker, you can put it over the comment number, and you can drop it on the comment number. That will place the marker exactly on that point. And so if you're hovering your cursor over everything, the marker then is placed exactly on that point, and therefore you can know exactly where it is. And when you get the deltas, then in relationship to your live and to your data where your cursor is, you know it is exactly the difference between where the marker is and where your cursor is. Or the exact difference between where the comment is and where your cursor is, instead of where you arbitrarily place the marker. So I just learned how to do that. So the last feature that I wanted to show you was the control click features, and one part of this is something that I learned not long ago as well. It was probably 6 months ago or so. One One of the things you can do with the control button, if I'm looking at the chart view here and I click on the control button, one of the things you'll notice is my cursor goes from a cross, or like a plus button there, to simply a quadruple arrow. Okay, you should see that here. It's going to change to a quadruple arrow. If I click now on my chart view, I have the ability to drag it back and forth. Okay, so I'm just dragging it back and forth here. Hopefully you guys can see that. Now one of the other things it lets you do is if I click, drag, and release my cursor, what it will do is scroll through the data at a set rate. Okay, I'm scrolling backwards at a set rate. So if you're trying to review your data, this is the easiest way to do it. Instead of trying to simply use the scroll bar down at the bottom, you can simply have it do it by itself, so you can just watch and not worry about how fast you're moving things. And you can move it at the right speed that allows you to see everything happening. Okay? And it won't stop until you click on the chart view again. If I click on the chart view here, it'll stop, which is great. And the faster you do that, scroll, hold control, click, scroll, and let go, the faster the data will move. Now, I realize that because you guys are watching this over a webinar, that this may not come through exactly the right way. I urge you to go try this on your own and see what it looks like. Essentially, you're just simply scrolling through the data, you're seeing everything come in, and you're able to see all of the data in a short amount of time. It allows you to really, if you're looking for something specific, maybe a spike in the data or something like that, you can look for that. And the last feature that I want to talk to you about is this is the thing that I learned about not terribly long ago, and that is the ability to use the control button to zoom in on a piece of data. So if I have zoomed out like I am now, okay, and I can do that with the compression buttons here on the bottom right of my screen, okay, and I find a piece of data that's interesting. Say I'm interested in this second block here. I can click on that block, okay. I'm clicking in that data. I'm going to hold control and use the expand horizontal scaling button here and zoom in. And what's going to happen is that specific location where I placed my cursor is going to become the center portion of my screen. So if you're trying to navigate data, again, this is a great way to do it. And this is one of those things that I, joked that changed my life when I saw this. You have the ability to, click on something that you see that's interesting, use the expand horizontal scaling, and zoom in on it. Okay, another great feature. Okay, so I hope that wasn't the order of that wasn't too random. I tried to put it in a way that made sense, but again, these were all things that were scattered around LabChart and were sort of difficult to put in a way that made sense. But I hope that you guys watching live and those of you that are going to watch this later got something out of this that you haven't used before and you're excited to use going forward. Each of these features I've found, really just increase the versatility and the use of LabChart, and these are all things again that we found, as a company, things that were underutilized and things we really like to see. So what I'm going to do now is I'm